Hey guys, welcome to the Sports Note for Tuesday, October 18th. We are a third of the way through the NFL season, if you can believe it, and things are now starting to come into form. We know that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to struggle in the midst of their rebuild. We know that the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be there at the end. We know the Cleveland Browns are an absolute train wreck. We knew that the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams were going to have a bit of a hangover, but there were a few things that we also didn't count on. We didn't count on the Philadelphia Eagles being 6-0. We didn't count on Dallas being this good without Dak Prescott. We didn't figure on San Francisco kind of actually being a 500 ball club with all of their talent coming through. We didn't anticipate the Jets being this good. But the other thing is we knew that Green Bay was possibly going to struggle, maybe leaving the door open for somebody else. And the Minnesota Vikings have apparently become that team to jump into the race in the NFC North. The Vikings right now are 5-1. They've already got a 2-game lead over the pack in that division, and honestly show no signs whatsoever of slowing that down. The Vikes are in the midst of a 4-game winning streak where they've won those 4 games. They've all been one-score games. A 4-point win against the Lions, 3-point win against the Saints, a 7-point game against the Bears. All 3 of those at home, and then went down to Miami this weekend and got an 8-point win down there, 24-16. And then their schedule now starts to get a little bit tougher because they will be playing the Cardinals at home, which will be their already their 5th home game of the season. But the thing is that the Cardinals right now are an even bigger mess. Even though they've traded for Anderson from the Panthers, the disgruntled receiver there. Then they actually go on the road for a couple against the Commanders and the Bills, and then they're home to the Cowboys, Patriots, and Jets, which takes us into the first part of December. But this is still a schedule that does favor them if some things fall the right way. Kirk Cousins is definitely no spring chicken anymore. Cousins actually is kind of sort of returning back to form here the later in his career that he's getting. He's in the top 10 in passing yards and touchdowns. He's got 1,500 passing yards. That puts him ninth. And he's got 9 touchdowns, which puts him eighth. He's 34 years old, and he's in the middle of a contract extension. He's still under contract with this extension for 4 more years, including this one with the Vikings. He'll be a free agent by the time he's 37. He's going to command $31.6 million this year and $36.25 next year. He will also, if you remember, Cousins was the first quarterback to sign a fully guaranteed contract in league history when he left the then Washington Redskins in 2018 to sign up with the Vikings. But Cousins, he's very, very polarizing. You're either with Cousins or you're against him. There's really not a whole lot of middle ground with Cousins. The thing is that some people have said Cousins is the kind of guy who can get you to a Super Bowl, may not be the guy to win it. But there's other people who have also said that Cousins is not even the guy to get you to the playoffs. Well, if you've got 5 wins in your first 6 games, you're well on your way to getting to the playoffs right now. And another big part of that is just really how explosive Minnesota's offense can be. It's very reminiscent of some of their great teams from the early 2000s and the 90s, just with all of that talent at all the skill positions. They've got an all-pro quarterback. Now, granted, time will tell if Cousins' best years are behind him, but you cannot argue with the year that Dalvin Cook's having. And the only thing I can say, this is another Dalvin Cook type year. He's 6th in the league in rushing. He's got 4 touchdowns. And he's already got 43 rushing touchdowns in a little over 3 seasons in the league. He's we all talked that Chris Carter all he did was catch touchdowns throughout his career. It seems that all Dalvin Cook likes to do is score touchdowns, regardless of how they come. But he might be one of the most dynamic offensive players in all of football. He's certainly in the top 5 for me. And then the other aspect with Minnesota's offense is, what is it with them popping out receivers who take over all of football? We talked about Carter. We remember how great Stephon Diggs was with them, and then he leaves, goes to Buffalo, and is now arguably the best receiver in football. They had, they had the success with Adam Thielen, and now you've actually got Jefferson with them. Jefferson has already got 46 catches in just the first 6 games, and that's fourth best in the league. His 654 yards are two behind Diggs for second, and Miami's Tyreek Hill's got 701 yards, and he's got 11 grabs over 20 yards, and he's got 3 catches over 30 yards. The only major category that Jefferson is not in the top 10 would be his touchdowns, because he's only got 2, and those were the deciding factors in the opener in their upset win over Green Bay in Minnesota. But his last 3 games, he's absolutely gone off. He's gone for 107, 154, and 147 yards each of the last 3 weeks. Not bad for for a guy that everyone thought was going to be good, but they had no idea that he was going to be this good this quick. Justin Jefferson is really starting to put himself into the conversation of the current Mount Rushmore of NFL receivers. You've got to put Tyreek Hill in there. You've got to put Stephon Diggs in there. And then, the last 2, you can make a case for several other guys. But Justin Jefferson it looks like he's getting his crew ready to go up there and start etching his, face on the mountain. And you would hope that a first-round pick, especially a receiver, would come out and kind of dominate like he has, and for all intents and purposes, Justin Jefferson has done exactly that. And the other thing about Jefferson is that a lot of the times when he's targeted, he comes up with it. In the 5 games that, in the most recent 5 games, according to the stat line here on ESPN, he was targeted 12 times against the Eagles in their loss, caught 6 balls. Targeted 6 times against Detroit, caught 3. Targeted 13 times against New Orleans, caught 10. Targeted 13 times against the Bears, caught 12. Targeted 8 times on Sunday against the Dolphins, caught 6. He's averaging at least 12 yards a catch over those last 3 games. He's got 15 first downs over that, and he's got longs in each of those games of over 30 yards. In 2 of those games, he actually had catches of over 40 yards. Now, granted, that is going to fatten up your stats, and we know that he can be a deep threat, but you also like to have a guy who can be a very, very competent possession receiver, a la kind of like what Chris Carter was. Carter was not the deep threat in Vikings lore, and Stephon Diggs was a deep threat and also was a very dominant receiver doing it. Minnesota also has a very competent defense, keeping them in a lot of these games. But the one thing, if Minnesota is going to put a nice little bow on this, once Thanksgiving is passed and we're into the playoff drive, they've actually got to get better production out of their special teams right now. Most specifically, kicker Greg Joseph. Now, Joseph was at 89% last season on his field goals. 86%. But this year, so far out of the chute, he's only 69%. He does have a career long of 56, but he also did have a kick blocked in a game against the Bears a couple of weeks ago. Thankfully, that block did not come back to haunt them. But this is something where, as good as Minnesota is, these games should not be as close as they are. Minnesota has enough talent, and their defense is kind of keeping them in things. I'm not putting all of this on Jefferson, but the other aspect of this would be that a little bit more consistency, and this is still something that Joseph was with the Vikings last year, but he's also with his 3rd team in 4 years. But it's something that you'd like to be able to get a little bit more consistency out of your special teams to be able to push these to possibly 2-score games. You don't want to be winning games this close. This way, your coaching staff, your players, and more importantly, your fans don't white knuckle up, the entire fourth quarter. You'd like to be able to put a couple of these games away, like earlier, like you did against the Packers. But let me know what you guys think. Are the Vikings for real? Are the Philadelphia Eagles for real? Who's going to be the team coming out of the NFC when the smoke clears? We know that some teams have kind of stumbled out of the gate. We know some teams are really, really trudging through the mud right now. Is this something where Cousins can actually find a fountain of youth that apparently has eluded Aaron Rodgers through the first 6 games, and can he be the guy to get the Vikings to maybe run away with this thing a little bit if Rodgers starts coming back down to earth after missing Devontae Adams? But again, let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys caught the replay of the Wise Guys show on our brand new YouTube channel, and also on this very channel here from over the weekend. We had a ton of fun. And we will be back with you on the Sports Note here, hopefully a little later on this week. And we're also plotting early November for the next edition of the Wise Guys. So take care, everyone. Have yourselves a great night.